I was raised on a farm in Wisconsin. We was a very poor family, and therefore there was no chance that I was going to go to college. However, I did very well in school, and the teachers were aware of that. I was very active in something called the Future Farmers of America, and they had a local cheesemaker who decided to give a $2,000 scholarship to someone who would work in the agricultural field to go to college. And you know who was selected to do that. Not only that, they worked on getting me a tuition scholarship at the University of Wisconsin. $95 a semester. And so I ended up at the University of Wisconsin. But I was very interested in chemistry. But I promised to go to ag school, and there's only one place where you can get chemistry in ag school: biochemistry. And so I wanted to be a biochemistry major with a BS degree in, they didn't give BS degrees in biochemistry because they had no undergraduate courses. So in order to get a BS degree in biochemistry, I had to do a Bachelor of Science thesis. Went around and talked to some of the biochem professors. There was one professor who was in something called nutritional biochemistry at that time, Bill Huckstra. And he had a collaborator by the name of Milton Sunday, and they said they would direct me in a thesis dealing with the study of zinc nutrition and how it affected bone development in chickens. And that's how I got started in nutrition, actually in nutritional biochemistry. After I got the bachelor's degree, I searched around where I should go to graduate school, and Bill Huckstra said, "Stay here. I'll make sure you have an NIH fellowship." And so for 4 years I worked with him on zinc, its importance for bone health, and with Milt Sunday as a co-advisor for that work. But after I graduated in 4 years, I had to go into the Army. And luckily, I had a fraternity brother that made sure that I went to the Medical Service Corps and the U.S. Army Medical Research and Nutrition Laboratory in Denver, Colorado, where I decided to work on mineral elements, because that's what I had done for 4 to 5 years at the University of Wisconsin, but not compete with my major professor. So I looked about, what should I do? And at that time, Klaus Schwartz had just got through discovering the essentiality of selenium. Walter Mertz had suggested the essentiality of chromium. And I said, well, maybe there are some other mineral elements out there that might be important nutritionally. And I started to work on nickel. And in the Army, while I was working on nickel, Walter Mertz came to interview me for a position at the Grand Forks Human Nutrition Research Center, which was opening up. We had a good talk over beer, and I was hired to be the first scientist. But the lab hadn't opened up yet, so I spent 1 year in Beltsville working on nickel, then went to the Grand Forks, where I have been ever since, type of thing. But mineral elements has been my focus during that time. Started out with nickel. Because I was doing a lot of diet formulations, I looked at the possibility of arsenic being essential, the possibility of vanadium being essential. And during one of my experiments, I didn't know it, but a vitamin D supplement I used was lower potency than indicated, and the chicks developed abnormal bones. But because I was using pure ingredients for my diets to make sure they were low in certain minerals, I thought maybe I left out some important nutrient. Lo and behold, it was boron that helped overcome the low potency of the vitamin D. And you know, that's what I'm known for, is my boron work. It's kind of interesting, you know, Dr. Harold Sandsted was a mentor of mine through the 70s up through 1984, which allowed me to continue work in an area where I would not have gotten much support through the grant system in this, but I did it through the federal system. But he left the lab in 1984. He was the center director. And they asked me to take over the facility, to be the scientist in charge while they searched for a new center director at the Grand Forks Human Nutrition Research Center. 18 months later, I was chosen to be that center director. So since June of 1984 until about February of 2001, I directed the center at Grand Forks. But being a director means I had to be involved with human nutrition That's changed. Before I was mostly animal nutrition. I performed numerous experiments using human volunteers on a metabolic ward where they would fed a diet that repeated every 3 days for 6 months, depleting and repleting certain mineral elements to determine their requirements. The elements I worked with included iron, zinc, copper, magnesium, and of course boron. I'm about the only person who has really done human depletion repletion experiments with boron. But it's also during this time I got very interested in magnesium, which I felt was not studied well enough and is more important in human nutrition than currently acknowledged. And I've become well known for my work in magnesium deficiency, when people do become deficient, and how the other dietaries affect magnesium. So I've changed from animal to various nutrients to human nutrition over the years. Well, you know, there's several areas, but I should mention one thing, because this is American Society of Nutrition. Because I was fooling around with formulating different diets, making them low in various mineral elements, I became very knowledgeable about making diets. In 1988, I was asked by the American Institute of Nutrition at that time to head up a committee to relook at the AIN 76A diet. It seems like there was a lot of problems with that. I think George Briggs, who helped develop that diet, and John Berry, who also helped develop that diet, were the ones that were instrumental in getting me to head up that committee. At that committee, we decided to have a workshop on this diet, on possibility of modifying the diet. This happened in 1989. With the help of Phil Reeves, we had this workshop, and then I came back to the Human Nutrition Research Center, where I had some control over what was being done there. I asked Phil to spearhead, I was involved with it, but spearhead creating a diet based on the recommendations and the suggestions given by the experts at that workshop, and following to create a diet and test it out and see if we could come up with a new diet. This new diet was the AI93 diet, which of course Phil and I are highly cited authors because of that diet. That's one of my accomplishments. Boron is another one. I find that there's a lot of work going on in boron throughout the world right now. It's not proven to be essential, but it definitely is bioactive. It's one of the components of fruits and vegetables that I think is a bioactive food component, long before they start talking about the phytonutrients, the organic ones, like the flavonoids or something like that. And of course, I am well known in the magnesium field because I've done the classic depletion experiments showing that intakes that are common throughout the world will result in deficiency signs, especially that have an impact on chronic diseases where the other factors will stress the magnesium deficiency. I've written over 70-some book chapters for different books. If they need a chapter on a mineral element, it seems like I'm asked. I've given over 70 invited symposium, written symposium articles, invited symposium articles on mineral elements, over 40 reviews, and it's involved over 30 different mineral elements, not just the ones I mentioned. If there's an element that possibly could be important in nutrition, I'm asked asked about it. Well, I retired a year ago. I'm what we would call an emeritus position in academics, but I'm a former federal employee, and they call their emeritus people special government employees. In other words, they give me an office, I have a computer, access to my reprint files in the library, and I don't have a research laboratory, but I have a lot of data that I accumulated through the years. The 16 years as Center Director involved in me not being able to publish as much data as I created. And I continue to be asked to write reviews and book chapters. And about once a week, I get a request from some journal to review an article on trace elements or magnesium. It's rather amazing. The last count was over 60 different journals have asked me now to review these articles. It keeps me busy. It keeps me very busy. and I do have some collaboration with some people who are doing boron and magnesium. So I don't do it myself, but I'm involved with talking with them and discussing the research and this type of activity. It's kind of fascinating what's happened over the last 44 years that I've been in it. Well, actually longer, since I started in 1959. But I started in the days when the vitamins were just about being finished and being discovered, and trace elements were the things to be in, the essentiality of trace elements. Then it became, that sort of died down, and then it became molecular biology. Everybody had to do something in molecular biology. And all of a sudden we came into the phytonutrients, and now we're into obesity. So things just change all the time. So what's happening in the future? I would say obesity is still going to be a problem. They're going to have to work on it. They need to still work on the idea of finding biochemical markers to determine when someone needs certain nutrients. And of course, omics is the big thing right now, where they'll try to use that to get more specific requirements for each individual instead of general requirements for a population. These are areas that I think are really going to be happening, and research is going to be happening in the next 15, 20 years. My favorite memories is all the colleagues that I've met through the years that come into these meetings. I started coming to my first one in 1964. I missed 1965, but I've come to every one since then. And there's a lot of grand people that I've met through the years, discussing research with them. You know, we can talk about old people that we did work in the 30s and 40s. You know, the Jerry Combs seniors, the Carl Paul Links, the Conrad Alviums, and these type of people, up to the present time where I'm meeting these young students coming in to be in nutrition. This is my fondest memory. I won't miss experimental biology because it gives me a chance to come back and meet with old people and to greet and learn about new people and new things that are happening. The idea of boron, of course, has always been a big thing for me. And as I indicated, the IN 93 diet, I think, was a fun thing to do. And my recent acknowledgement, or people realizing that I've done something in magnesium, has been important. And another thing is most of the studies that's done in human volunteers with on a metabolic ward, long-term studies, was done at my location under my direction. As a result, this is what helped develop the new RDA for calcium, and it's likely to come up with a new RDA for magnesium, and it's pointed out some of the importance of the other mineral elements like zinc and iron and copper.